Charlotte, I wanted to get to that victory and get your take on it. Charlotte Iserbyt, for those that don't know, was the head of policy at the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan, and she discovered that it was an absolute plan to dumb kids down and teach them how to only regurgitate information. Suddenly, I've seen a lot of mainstream articles admitting all of this and how we're last behind the industrialized world now in all of this. But she got all the documents out, put it in her book, Deliberate Dumbing Down. The website's deliberatedumbingdown.com. It's now out of print, but she's graciously put an free e-version up there on the site. And, of course, she also worked with the U.S. Department of Education before that, worked in the Foreign Service, Japan, Guam during the Korean War. Her dad and grandfather, of course, were Skull and Bones. And we really appreciate her joining us. The reason she's almost for the next 20 minutes is she was on about a week and a half ago, and the show ended right as she was getting into how conservatives are controlled. And she brought up the CNP, which I haven't done a lot of research on. People have asked about it, so I've done some, that reportedly the Hunt brothers helped set up and things. And she was saying that that's not a real organization, or that isn't a conservative group trying to take America back or fight the New World Order, as they claimed, but actually is the New World Order and her experiences with them. So I wanted to get her up. Charlotte, great having you back with us.
Thank you, Alex. And we don't have much time today, so really it's probably just as well because, I'm going to try. It's better when I don't have a lot of time than I just have to do bullets, huh? But the basic, this is terrible to have to tell people this, but we are merging right now with the Soviet Union. I know, people don't accept that because they had to have the phony fall of the Soviet Union so that all of you, and your listeners are smart, but so the rest of the world would really think that communism was dead. And communism is not dead at all. It's more alive than it ever was before the phony fall. What we're looking at right now is what Rowan Gaither, the president of the Ford Foundation, told the research director for the Congressional Committee investigating the tax-exempt foundations, Norman Dodd, in 1954 at a closed, off-the-record meeting. And your listeners have heard this before, but you got to keep listening and keep telling people this, because although it sounds outlandish and off the wall, it's true. He was told by the president of the Ford Foundation that the foundations received their instructions from the White House. Of course, that was 1953 under President Eisenhower, who later, just 5 years later, during the Cold War, signed the first agreement with the Soviets in every area imaginable. So anyway, but he was told that they got their instructions, the foundations from the White House, to spend their money, which is actually your money, tax-exempt, to bring about a merger of the United States and the Soviet Union. And what you have to do is just knock Soviet Union out of your head and think in terms of what's going on with the North American Union, which they're quieter now. They're hiding away because of the good people.
And they're using the fake environmental movement as a way to collectivize and cut off resources.
Absolutely.
As a mode of control. And,
right.
and just to back you up, I mean, we can pull this up. Actually, the Carnegie Foundation, in multiple congressional hearings, their early minutes, even from the 20s, have been released, where they said this was the plan all along. And it turns out U.S. and British intelligence, and this has been partially declassified, did put the Bolsheviks into power. So it isn't just like they're merging. The whole thing was set up by the banks. But Charlotte, people really wanted to hear about this CNP thing.
Okay, so the CNP, I'm just going to briefly tell you my experience. When I was in the Department of Education, I got down there. I was just bewildered all the time by different things that kept happening. And so I finally got fired because I leaked a document which was to control the curriculum on the computer throughout the country. And I couldn't understand why Ronald Reagan was allowing that to happen. I was beginning to see that Ronald Reagan was not at all what I had thought he was.
Well, he was known in the 50s. He was known in the 50s as Red Ronnie.
Absolutely, and I personally do not believe he ever changed. and all of that. A lot of that on my website.
Well, John Wayne didn't like him in the 40s and 50s, and then later liked him because he claimed he was a conservative. But everybody knows John Wayne didn't like communists, but he admittedly was in with the communists early on.
Oh, yeah, and, well, you have to ask yourself, why, while I was in the Department of Ed, I was a liaison with the White House for really public-private partnerships, which is the merging of the public and private sector. That's the Communist Manifesto, okay? And where government and business are merged together. So anyway, they were putting that in under Reagan, and I asked at the White House, I said, what on earth are they doing this for? Isn't this corporate fascism? And I was told, I guess that the people involved, all the high-up elitist people on the task force, they just don't see it that way. So I was becoming very suspicious. Then, of course, what happens, aside from everything I saw in the Department of Ed, which is all in my book, I don't have to go through all that. People, it's a free download, okay? Then when I get out, I write a little book, Back to Basics Reform, or Skinnerian International Curriculum. And that was a brilliant little book. It's only 39 pages, and it is on my Deliberate Dumbing Down website as a free PDF.
And it's how they turn the kids into biological robots, not free-thinking creatures.
Yes, that's right. So anyway, we're talking about CNP. All of a sudden, I thought, everybody would want this little book. Well, it was boycotted by every single major conservative organization in the country. And I thought, what on earth is wrong here? Because folks, go read that book, and you're going to see a little 39-page book that had it gone all over this country and Canada. We would not now be looking at school-to-work agenda, the Soviet system, quota system for your children, which will control their lives lifelong, what they're going to do. We wouldn't be seeing that. We wouldn't be seeing charter schools, which I'll explain to you are the vehicle to implement the Soviet system.
Now, I played a British government-funded cartoon for kids yesterday where they teach them that cities will be prison and that the government will decide what you're going to be.
Well, that's exactly what we're looking at in the charter school movement. And the charter school movement, which is being supported by the school choice charter school movement, being supported heavily by the Heritage Foundation, the Council for National Policy, etc., is actually the downfall of our country. We've got like a stool with 2 or 3 pegs. 2 of the pegs are our free political system whereby we elect officials. The other peg, the most key thing for the economy, is that we have a free economy. The charter schools are going to pull those 2 pegs right out. No elected officials, which will follow down into every area after they've taken over all the schools, and all the schools in this country are almost taken over by charter schools now. There are only 10 states fighting it, okay? Now, the other leg is the planned economy, which requires that school to work. And the school to work needs the charter schools, the individual schools, which will train your children, not educate them. Now, folks, you've got to fight charter schools.
Well, Charlotte, you're such a great lady. I mean, every time you come on, you desperately try to warn folks about the takeover, and that's important. The show ended last week, though, and I was unable to get you on the next day because you were busy. We've got you on this week, and I'll hold you over a little bit. I'm sure Bob will be fine if we need to. But I mean, I'm always trying to learn more and understand all this. If you go back 13, 14 years ago, I bought this mainline conservative propaganda that let folks have school choice. Well, they should at private schools, but not corporate funded, which is just the internationalization. They're now basically becoming the government. Wreck the old schools, federalize them, then offer the solution. Now I understand that. And also, I've interviewed people over the years and a few times heard them mention CMP. Okay, well, Alex, let me talk about this. I'm going to give you a good example. You're down in Texas, okay? Yes.
I realize that the CMP is just about as right as it comes. Funded by Heritage, funded by Coors, funded by all these...
No, you're saying you ran into them. So, I mean...
all right, now look, I'm going to tell you how it happened. About 15 years ago, I became I thought to myself, we've got to stop this agenda that's going in here, this merger, this whatever. And the only way we can do it, we have to get out of the UN. Because no matter how hard we fight on other issues, once we're under the North American Union, which is the same as the European Union, which Gorbachev calls the new European Soviet, once we're under, it won't make any difference if we have an amendment to outlaw abortion or gun controls or whatever. So I dreamed up this little project, to have a postcard project, millions of postcards all over the country, which have on them legislation to get out of the UN, who you call, websites, the rotten UN that has funded every UN war, controlled every UN war, or the Soviets are right up there at the UN controlling everything. That's why we lose all the bad stuff about the UN. Well, what we wanted to do is we'd all have thousands of these little postcards, which we would send with bills, Christmas cards, put up on the bulletin board at the supermarket, put under windshield wipers, get out across the country. People call supporting legislation to get out of this one organization that controls everything. Now, so what we did, we downloaded the names of all the members of the CNP. 300 of them. Samuel, my son, did it, who has American descent.
Okay, tell folks who the CNP is.
The Council for National Policy is the right-wing arm of the dialectic. It's the same as the CFR, and in fact, many of the people with the CFR funded it. All right.
Well, I've always heard the right call the CFR liberal, but I mean, it's full spectrum liberals and conservatives in the CFR.
Oh yes, of course, and it's full spectrum liberals and conservatives.
So this is like the Republican version of that, I guess, to pull in conservatives and then control and influence them. Is the whole CNP bad? Because this is how I learned about the CNP. I mean, I'd seen little blurbs about it with the Hunt brothers. They sounded pretty good, trying to corner the silver market and and then get us out of the New World Order. But then I saw evidence of them involved with the Kennedy stuff and Nixon. So I learned more as the years go on how foggy all of this is. And then I get emails going, "You had Pat Buchanan on. He's CNP." It's almost like a witch hunt. Well, yeah, I have a lot of guests on. I've had a Rothschild on and skewered him on air. It doesn't mean that I call up his publisher and say I want to have him on about his book, get him on and go after him. Doesn't mean I'm for him. I was against him in the interview. But then there's also a lot of people who've been in the CNP, like a Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, and he's grown. He's learned things. I've talked to him about it. He just says it's basically ineffectual.
Oh, that's not true at all.
Okay, well then tell me because you know him.
You didn't let me finish the end of it, Alex.
Go ahead.
The most important part is Rosalind Haley from Midland, Texas, who Ron Paul knows, and we all know her as a great grande dame. She was a member of the CNP. And I had this project that I wanted to get going, and I talked to Roz, and she said, "That's great." We tried to get help. So we sent a big yellow manila envelope full of clippings about Soviet tanks and training and all in the southern United States and exchanges and everything to every member of this Council for National Policy, which is made up of top businessmen and the heads of all of the conservative groups in this country, just about, okay? And we asked for help on this project. We wanted help on this getting out of the UN project. We got one response. I'll tell you, I didn't put my name on it because that's real mud. I knew that they wouldn't do anything if they saw Iserbyt. So it was Roz Haley, the grande dame, the woman that they admired. She signed it. She sent it out. We got one response from Lou Sheldon at Traditional Values. We did not hear from anyone else. Now, if that doesn't tell your listeners, stay away from every single conservative group you know.
Stay there. We got a break. Come back and break it down for us. In just a few days, Charlotte's going to leave the country for 3 months, so I twisted her arm to get her back on, and now she's like, I need more time to cover all this. We got Bob Chapman coming up, so I'm glad you're here to discuss it with us because I'm trying to understand all these different organizations and groups. Now, let's get back to the CNP. So the break stopped you. You were saying she sent this grande dame of the group or the organization. She sends them the information, and then she gets one response back.
Yeah, we sent it to all 300 members, and Rosalind Haley from Midland, Texas, close to Ron Paul and all. You probably know. Her husband wrote the best book in the world on Lyndon Johnson, Evans Haley. Anyway, Rosalind, who was a great American, and she died a few years ago, she and this was our project. And so I don't need to say any more, do I? I mean, we get one response from 300 people who tell us they're trying to save the United States. That's the goal of the CMP, to save the United States for our children, to clean up education, to take care of taxes, and what a big bunch of you-know-what.
Boy, so again, from your perspective, a brief history of the CMP, and where are they in the power structure from your research?
Well, I mean, you had Paul Weyrich, was very important. He died recently. He was the initial head of the Heritage Foundation, and then he had his Family Research Council, and then you've got Edwin Fulner, who came on as the head of the Heritage Foundation later, and then you've got all of the other conservative organizations. You've got, these are people that I've worked with and liked, so I don't even like to talk about them, but people like, Howard Phillips and James Dobson, but I have to say, and LaHaye, Beverly LaHaye and Tim LaHaye, I'll tell you.
What about Phyllis Schlafly? I mean, is she New World Order?
Phyllis Schlafly, who I know very, very well and have worked with for ages. So it's not much fun for me to talk about these people.
So, I mean, are they consciously bad?
Well, it's very hard to say. And I have to say something for Phyllis, although, unfortunately, she has really been, and I've worked with her on this, she's been on the wrong side with charter schools. She's never seemed to get it. But I have to give her credit on the Constitutional Convention. Nobody has done better work to keep us from having a Constitutional Convention than Phyllis Schlafly. Personally, don't ask me why she can be so good on that. And then support charter schools, which are going to be the vehicle which will bring this country down into the planned economy with unelected boards across the board.
No, but that's my issue is that I know the CFR's bad, and but a lot of their members are mid-level. They're brought in to be co-opted and controlled. I, from my research, do believe that, I don't know if it was founded good or got taken over, but certainly the CMP goes along with the whole neocon agenda and is bad. I just get emails saying, cover the CMP, so I've done research on it.
It was funded by Rockefeller and Scaife Mellon and all, same as Heritage. And really, wait a minute, do you think that the Rockefellers, well, they do fund everything, both sides, but they knew they had, they set up this conservative think tank, the CMP, sort of, and all the conservative organizations belong to it, plus corporate sector.
No, I know they set up Heritage. You're saying you're sure they set it up? Wow, then it's purely bad then.
Yes. And what I want you to do, because I'm not the expert on this, but I have told you, Alex, you must interview Kelly Nelson and Shay Simonton. These are brilliant gals who are out there. Nobody ever heard of them because nobody wants anybody to hear of them.
Well, I'll tell you who talked about this briefly in an interview, and I should have gone into it in more depth because, he's his uncle was a conservative icon. He's very well known. That's Joel Skousen of Cleon Skousen family. And he agrees with you. So, and in fact, we went and interviewed him in a two-part interview on this subject and other subjects, how the neocons control the conservative movement. That video is going up on prisonplanet.tv either tomorrow or...
Well, that's terribly important, I'm glad you're doing that. But what I want people to understand, I want to reduce it to the level where people... Look...
All right, stay there. Back in 60 seconds. Back in 60 seconds. We'll have 5 more minutes ahead of Bob Chapman. Stay with us. We are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. We got 5 minutes left with Charlotte Iserbyt. And we've got a report coming out that gets into how the conservative movement's controlled. And we've, of course, covered that a lot in the past from the Council on Foreign Relations that is bipartisan, but also how the establishment tried to go in and control the anti-New World Order movement. And that is this full-spectrum dominant system. Nothing can stop you, as the American people, from going out and running for office yourself and sticking to the issues and not being co-opted. There's been an attempt to co-opt the Tea Party. It's been somewhat successful, but not overall. And that's why we're getting major traction, because of people like Charlotte Iserbyt over the years and Dr. Stan Monteith and countless others fighting the good fight against tyranny. You said you wanted to boil this down, Charlotte.
Well, Alex, I just want to ask your listeners there, how can they trust the Council for National Policy to do what they want them to do, which means every single conservative organization you ever heard of belongs to that group? If we send out a letter to every single president of that particular group in order to asking them to help us get out of the most important entity down into a Soviet system, which is the UN, which was founded by communists. How can we trust these groups when they don't even answer our letter asking for help to
what
get
about
out of the UN?
What about the John Birch Society? They've got the big get us out of the UN movement.
They've been doing that for years, but I understand in the beginning they were infiltrated as well. What you've got to understand is that the infiltration is complete across the board. And remember, I mean, I'm not talking about CNP funding as much as others, because CNP is all the different groups. But the Heritage Foundation was funded by Richard Mellon Scaife. That's Chase Mellon Bank and Rockefeller. They gave them $900,000 to get it off the ground.
No, I knew that. I've seen the proof of that. I haven't seen the proof of the John Birch Society. I've seen people claim that.
I know. I haven't really seen it either, and if I do, I try not to believe it. But anyway,
I mean, Charlotte, here's an example. People say we're owned by ABC at Genesis. When to be on talk radio, we've rented probably over the years 15 or more different satellites. Anybody can go, rent a feed on a satellite. That's how a gardening show gets syndicated. It's not true. Or they say some guy from Saudi Arabia owns us with no proof. And so my experience is I've gotten a little more seasoned in all of this. Is that I've always just constantly hear people say, this is this is that. And so that almost puts me at a disadvantage, because then I kind of wave things off even when it is true, and then I go research and find out about things like this. So that's why I'm getting you on, because you had some actual run-ins with this. But then...
Well, I sure did.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been disappointed all the way down the line. I mean, Ronald Reagan, don't get me on that subject. People should try to go buy that book. Here's the rest of him. Go try to buy that book. It sells for $100 now. You can't get it. That's what he was like as governor. We were taken to the cleaners. Absolutely taken to the cleaners by him. But the most important thing now, folks, is the Heritage Foundation affiliates in every state that are pushing for the end of our political and economic system as we have known it through charter schools. I keep telling you this. Charter schools will set in motion getting rid of all forms of elected officials, starting with school boards.
Yeah, regional government, putting it all under federal and international. Amazing.
Yes, and also the Soviet Polytech planned economy is being put in right now. This is what Reagan did. The plans were for this, and Norman Dodd knew all about it too. But it's going in right now, and you have to go after the Heritage affiliate in your state. You find out what that affiliate is, and you go up against them and their funding of money to
Bob
get
Chapman's
charter
holding.
schools.
Bob Chapman's holding, but I'm going to hold you over and let you finish and then get Bob's take on what you said.